Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this virtual event of the Unbound Book Festival. My name is Gabriel Freed, and I'm on the programming committee at Unbound and also serve as the director of poetry programming. Tonight, we're thrilled to have three wonderful poets, Amy Haddad, C. Dale Young, and Hala Alyan, all three of whom also have careers in healthcare. This has been a year in which we all have focused so unwaveringly on health, personal and public, physical and mental, as well as the systems, economic and ethical, through which people receive or do not receive the care they need. So we thought it would be appropriate to host a reading by accomplished poets who lead double lives as authors and healers. A few matters of business before we get to our reading. As you may know, the festival has always been completely free to attend, and this wouldn't be possible without the generosity of hundreds and hundreds of people who have supported us financially over the years. On behalf of everyone who volunteers for Unbound and everyone who attends these events, we're so grateful to have each and every one of you who has been kind enough to give. If you'd like to help us out, please go to the website, unboundbookfestival.com, and click on the donate button on the homepage. We're a registered nonprofit and run completely by volunteers, so everything we receive goes directly into putting on these events. Thank you so much. Support comes too from the City of Columbia, specifically the Office of Cultural Affairs and the Convention and Visitors Bureau. KBIA and Como Magazine are our media sponsors. A full list of our sponsors and supporters is available on our website. Particular thanks this evening to tonight's event sponsor, the Christian Fellowship Church, which has been sponsoring and supporting Unbound from year one. We're very grateful to them for their support over the years. For our poetry readings, we don't have Q&As the way we do following our panels, but we do encourage you to hoot and holler and chat in the chat as lines of poetry or poems strike you. It's fun for the poets to go back and read them after the fact. If you haven't already, please take a moment after tonight's reading to review the whole schedule. It's 3 months long, and we're about 2/3 of the way in, and plan to attend as many events as you can. We'd love to see you. And please remember that if you miss an event or if you want to watch one again, everything is available for viewing or reviewing on both our Facebook page and on our YouTube channel, which you should subscribe to. Our first reader tonight is Amy Haddad, registered nurse and PhD, who teaches ethics at Creighton University, where she is director of the Center for Health Policy and Ethics. And I love that I get to introduce someone with that job title at a poetry reading. Her poems have appeared in journals including Ars Medicus, American Journal of Nursing, the Bellevue Literary Review, Janus Head, Journal of General Internal Medicine, the Journal of Medical Humanities, and Touch. She's also published poems in anthologies and books, including Health Humanities Reader, Intensive Care, Between the Heartbeats, and Stories of Illness and Healing, Women Write Their Bodies. It has been such a pleasure to really get to know some of Amy's poetry in anticipation of tonight's event, and it gives me great pleasure to welcome her to Unbound. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm going to read poems that have a different focus, each one. So the first one is kind of generally about healthcare, and then I'll let you know as we go along where I'm shifting my focus, because that's kind of how my writing is, about patients, health professionals, family members, caregivers, and then about me, because I'm also a patient. So we'll get started. The fit of suffering. Go ahead, try it on like clothes. Pick any patient's room. So sick, they won't even notice when you slide the curtain and rifle through their stuff. Turn around to see how suffering fits. If the sweat rings of shock under the arms and around the neck are your size. Pull it on like a backpack. Gauge the load to see what you can bear, what brings you to your knees. The ER is either empty or full of the keening kind. Slide into the plastic chair, burning with desperation from the last occupant. How long can you sit still till the heat makes you jump to your feet? Try to get your breath while wails constrict your chest and arms before you tear suffering off and run. The waiting rooms are rife with it. Here you must try it on like shoes. Practice patience. Let one drop, then count the minutes, the hours, the days, until the second shoe joins its mate. The next 3 poems are about my experiences as a patient. Button made of skin, easy access to my veins, easy as a whore, blank-eyed and indifferent, opening to the syringe. When chemo is through, I ask to have it removed. The silver scar stays, peeking out above my bra, shining at dinner parties. Before and after breasts. In a place where every woman who waits is in pain, the chairs are wooden and hard. The plastic surgeons hire only beautiful receptionists who wear pink smocks to show off their tasteful cleavage. I await dismemberment and reconstruction. No choice about losing my breasts. Some choice about what I could do to hide my loss. Too weak or proud for the flat chest and the judgment of strangers. I pass the time before my appointment with a photo album placed in my lap by a young woman in pink who gets to keep her breasts. I have seen this kind of book in pricey salons, a portfolio of the master's work of lovely models with exquisite haircuts. This book is filled with headless women, hands on hips, cut off at the navel, paired up as before and after photos of breasts, pages of breasts. The before breasts droop in the way breasts do that have been used for food and lovemaking, breasts that give to the pull of time. The after breasts look startled, at attention, and always bigger than the before breasts. Think of this as an opportunity to have the breasts you've always wanted, the plastic surgeon pitches to me. A used car salesman, he examines my trade-ins, their wear and tear, mismatched size, and memories. Dark rides. Fat, dumb, and happy, assured I was cured, unaware for years I was waiting in line, inching forward, pushed past the sign. You must have this much cancer to ride this ride. Kathunk. An empty car arrives. I'm next. I hurl through swinging doors into darkness. I hear the muffled gasps and moans of other riders. Death pops up out of nowhere. Skeletons sit next to me in waiting rooms in this living nightmare. The illusion of collision is ever present, even with my eyes closed. Other rides provide a warning of the doom ahead. Keep your hands and arms inside the car. Grasp the bar at the front of your seat. Pay attention to what normal feels like. Get ready to lose everything in a stomach-dropping moment. My dark ride has no rules. It just blindly jerks forward with no connection between the stunts until the doors crash open, piercing me with light. This next poem is from the perspective of a caregiver, a lay caregiver, a spouse. Nightly we float in Ben Gunn's boat. My husband was most alert in the mornings. The sedative that held the seizures at bay was at low tide then. As the sun moved across the sky, more drugs were loaded on board, until his head drooped to rest on his chest. Bedtime came early. I read Treasure Island aloud to him, my voice the gentle wind blowing on the foam. With Jim Hawkins, we sailed in Ben Gunn's tiny craft, a walnut shell of a boat. The goatskin covered, flat bottomed bark, a coracle, was safe for one person in a shallow, slow flowing river. Not so carrying a cargo of two in the unruly ocean with its changeable moods and crushing waves. We were at sea. We did not know the way of our skiff that turned in every direction but the one we were bound to go. Trying to steer our course to calm waters induced a violent soaking, leaving us terrified and drenched until we fell back to hide at the bottom of the boat, afraid to raise our heads. Each night, for weeks, I reread the same chapter because my husband could not remember our story from the prior night in our light little boat that rode well unless we grew bold and made waves. And these are observations of patience. Please stand behind this sign to wait. He always builds in extra time to wait in line. Admissions, like confession, need space. To share secrets, like date of birth and primary insurer. He clutches his homemade chart, maroon and worn to his chest, cradles lab reports and scans as if they are sacred art. Illuminated scripture writ in radioactive gilt, all it lacks is a ribbon to mark the spot for today's reading from the book of Job. He holds out his wrist for a paper bracelet. Laminated number in hand, he finds a seat among the expectant faithful. More than one Band-Aid is displayed on his tissue paper skin. His fly zipper barely holds his belly in. The tech shouts a patient number, 065. He rises, waves his card, and calls out, bingo. The course of leukemia. Between searching the luncheon specials, catching up, and small talk, she offers a précis of agony. Her whispered chronicle of loss holds me while the waiter moves clockwise around the table taking orders. Behind our menus, she recounts a shorthand version of her husband's dying, as the rest of the party struggles with hard choices about soup or salad. The clink of silver and splash of water and ice drift around us, muffling her words. He had fevers over 100 degrees, chills. I had to pick him up from the floor so many times. He was a big man, you remember, right? Bled, such a mess. I'd ask him, are you in pain? No, he'd say, always no. Horrible, so thin, just horrible. Bruised so easily, so hard for me, so hard for him at the end. Only the briefest pause. Oh, just a second, let me see. I think I'll have the duck, thank you, and water's okay. With lemon, please. I am next, trying to focus on an entree. The way to eat an orange. On a break between manicures, one of the older women pokes around in a purse at her feet. I watch her take out a whole peeled orange from a plastic bag. Slanted, arthritic fingers hold it poised before her mouth. She glances at a game show on the overhead TV and takes a huge bite, eating it like an apple. She dabs the dripping juice from her chin, conceiving the orange as a whole. I stare as she eats down to the circle of peel at the stem end. The sections suggest nothing to her. I pick a polish. As directed, I make my hand into a paw and gingerly hold it before a tiny fan while my other fingers get a top coat. I think about why I would never eat an orange that way, never see the possibility. If we were cows, she and I, we would tramp along the same worn track through the field at the end of each day until a tractor blocks the way. She would raise her head and veer into the acres of alfalfa and grass to try a different route to the milking barn. I would stand dumbstruck, waiting for the tractor to move. Thank you.
Amy, thank you so much for that wonderful array of perspectives of patients and caregivers. That was wonderful.
You're welcome.
Next, we're excited to welcome Seedale Young. Seedale Young practices medicine full-time as a radiation oncologist in San Francisco and is also a famously, fruitfully exacting teacher in the Warren Wilson College MFA program for writers. He is the author of a novel and stories called The Affliction, and also the author of 5 collections of poetry, including the recently published Prometeo. He is the recipient of fellowships from the Breadloaf Writers Conference, the National Endowment for the Arts, the John Simon Guggenheim Memorial Foundation, and the Rockefeller Foundation. His poetry and short fiction have appeared in many anthologies and magazines, including Best American Poetry, Asian American Poetry, The Next Generation, American Poetry Review, The Atlantic Monthly, The Nation, The New Republic, Paris Review, and Poetry Magazine. And he is, like many of my favorite people, a die-hard baseball fan. Please welcome the formidable Seedale Young.
Thank you, Gabe. I'm actually going to read entirely from my new book, Prometeo, and I don't think I need to set anything up. I'll just read. The first poem is titled At Lake Merced. Some men go down to the river. I went down instead to the lake, the air silent and stretched tightly over it, the water unmoved and dangerously still. Some men move past such a scene without even the slightest notice of it. But this morning, a man in a shell rode across this lake's smooth surface, the tip of his shell leaving a widening V behind it, the shell cleanly slicing through the water like an arrow, the way an arrow slices through air or flesh. And just like that, the image of the saint pierced through by arrows becomes fixed within my head, the arrows all leaving V's behind them, V for violence, as if the very air were an impasto on canvas. And just like that, the arrows slicing through the air become bullets, each one leaving its V behind it, the paint at the target dabbed with a red duller than crimson. You may wonder why on earth a man shot through centuries ago would appear to me upon seeing this tiny shell of a boat crossing a lake, but the present day does a remarkable job of emulating the past. Let us leave it at that. Some men find nothing, and others find omens everywhere. The stillness of the air above the lake, the shells slicing through the water, the saint shot through with arrows yet living, breathing, his chest heaving, his head slumping while the arms remain perfectly still, and the brown boy shot through with bullets, his wounds a red duller than crimson. Things like this still happen almost every day. I always pride myself on having the right thing to say. I think I've been that way both as a writer and as a physician. And this poem is about the one time where I didn't have the right thing to say. It's titled The Call, and it's in memory of my uncle, Cecil Young. The Call. I'm addicted to words, constantly ferret them away in anticipation. You cannot accuse me of not being prepared. I am ready for anything. I can create an image faster than just about anyone. And so, the crows blurring the tree line, the sky's light dimming and shifting, the Pacific cold and impatient as ever, this is just the way I feel. Nothing more. I could gussy up those crows, transform them into something more formal, more Latinate, could use the exact genus Corvus, but I won't. Not today. Like any addict, I too have limits. And I have written too many elegies already. The living have become jealous of the amount I have written for the dead. So leave the crows perched along the tree line, watching over us. Leave them be. The setting sun, leave it be. For God's sake, what could be easier in a poem about death than a setting sun? Leave it be. Words cannot always help you, the old poet taught me, cannot always be there for you, no matter how you store them away with sharpened forethought. Not the courier in his leather sandals, his legs dark and dirty from the long race across the desert, not the carrier pigeon arriving with the news of another dead Caesar and the request you present yourself. Nothing like that. The telephone rings. Early one morning, the telephone rings, and the voice is your mother's voice. No fanfare. Your father's brother is dead. He died that morning. And your tongue went silent. Like any other minor poet, you could not find the best words, the appropriate words. Leave it be now. You let your mother talk and talk to fill the silence. Leave it be. All of your practiced precision, all of the words saved up for a poem can do nothing to remedy that now. In another reading, I made a joke that I like to write revenge poems, poems where I get back at people for things they have done to me in time, over time. And I guess in a way, this is a revenge poem for myself. I'm taking revenge upon myself. This poem is titled Partially Right. To arrange and rearrange the 7 olives on the tabletop took hours, one can imagine, for the man we have come to know as Galileo. 7, because Neptune had to be a star, and Pluto was nothing more than a speck in the imagination. On the tabletop, the concentric circles of ink on paper were punctuated by these 7 olives, at the center a small orange to represent our sun. Because he was right in all things heliocentric, Galileo was also wrong. The Earth may not have been the center of the universe, but as it turns out, neither was our sun. Looking at the night sky above Vermont, we did not need telescopes to discern the Milky Way. It was simply there for all to see. Stars, stars and more stars, littering the blue-black ink of the sky as if the Vedic myth about a god spilling milk, or, depending on the translation, his semen to create the heavens, were in fact truth. But truth is never easy, is it? Ashes to ashes, dust to dust, we know we are of this earth, and standing in a field, the chill of late August coming down, what did any of us know about truth? We are poets and writers who have devoted ourselves to fictions, to myth, to lies. So when a young man in a fey black jacket said that we were made of the very dust of the stars, I laughed. The hardened scientist in me laughed, because even if there were some tiny grain of truth in it, wouldn't this young Galileo be only partially right. There is, after all, poetry in almost everything. The moth plunging into the sun of a candle's flame, the way dust seems to dance within beams of light, the way the hunger in each of us betrays the soul. All of it so goddamned poetic. 7 olives on a table in a small town in Italy, Galileo watchful and intent on them, forcing himself to divine the workings of the heavens. Even that is poetic. 7 planets and 7 gods or goddesses to steer them through the night sky. And what of this poor student of physics, this even poorer student of biochemistry? This student discovers years later that in each and every one of us there are 7 grams of silica, 7 grams of dust that came from the stars. It is never easy, the truth. It has never been easy. Alone now, and far from Vermont, there is no one to utter platitudes or poetry to me in the dark. And up above me, the sky is speckled with stars. Do they call to us the way the ocean calls to the salt water within us? I don't know. It isn't my job to know. My job is to look up. It is a job our kind has had for all of our short-lived history. This next poem I'm going to read is actually for one of my closest friends who passed away. It's hard for me to imagine, but almost 2 years ago now, the poet Paulo Tremba. And it's kind of funny to read it after the last poem because he was there when the young man in the black fade jacket made the comment about the stars. The poem is titled Cancer. One must be trained to see it. One finds it by finding the lion first, and then the brothers. The faintest of the 13 signs in the night sky, we have learned to see it by discerning what flanks it. You were right that evening in Vermont to say it doesn't even look like a crab. I joked it looked more like an upside-down Y, more like the Greek lambda, a symbol which for me had more to do with radioactivity calculations used in radiation therapy. I was showing off, you see, making sure I would be seen as a doctor as well as a writer. But by then we were already close enough for you to forgive my arrogance. But your question came quickly. How do you do it? Every day. All those people with cancer. We stared at the stars, and I recounted a sordid story about an old poet we admired. The stars, the resulting story, and your laughter, the things memory made indelible. You knew it was the veins spreading out in a solid tumor, seen when cut and examined, that reminded Hippocrates of the crab, something far less poetic than the stars seen in the night sky. But that is how you chose to think about it. And because oncologists always think of cancer, I purposely chose to think of reflux when, over lunch 2 years ago, you kept coughing, kept choking. Later, you told me that as you lay in the scanner, you loved the idea of light passing through you. Photons used to look inside your chest. Even then, you chose the poetic. Your greatest fear was that the biopsy might discover an ulcer, leading to restrictions on fine food and wine. Instead, they found the crab. You were born under the sign of the scorpion, but I always saw you as a lion. A brother, I assumed you were safely distanced from the crab. Let the light pass through you now. Not the photons we manipulate for medicine, but the starlight that has traveled with us for millennia. We need not look for the lion or the brothers anymore. I'm going to close with the closing poem from the book, and it is fairly true. I'm visited by my dead grandfather every year on my birthday. Between the dragon and the phoenix, fire in the heart, fire in the sky, the sun just a smallish smudge resting on the horizon out beyond the reef that breaks the waves, fiery sun that waits for no one. I was little more than a child when my father explained that the mongrel is stronger than the thoroughbred, that I was splendidly blended, genetically engineered for survival. I somehow forgot this, misplaced this, time eroding my memory as it erodes everything. But go ask someone else to write a poem about time. Out over the bay, the sun is rising, and I am running out of time. Each and every year on my birthday, I wake to watch the sunrise. I am superstitious, and today, as in years past, it is not my father, but my father's father who comes to shout at me. Whether you like it or not, you are a child of fire. You descend from the dragon, descend from the phoenix. Your blood is older than England, older than Castile. Year after year, he says the same thing. This old man, dead long before I was born. So I wake each year on the day of my birth to watch the fire enter the sky while being chastised by my dead grandfather. Despite being a creature of fire, I stay near the water. Why even try to avoid what can extinguish me? There are times I can feel the fire flickering inside my frame. The gulls are quarreling, the palm trees shimmering, the world keeps spinning on its axis. Some say I have 9 lives. Others think me a machine. Neither is true. The truth is rarely so conventional. Fire in my heart, fire in my veins. I write this down for you and watch as it goes up in flames. There are no paragraphs wide enough to contain this fire, no stanzas durable enough to house it. Blood of the dragon, blood of the phoenix. I turn my head slowly toward the east. I bow and call for another year. I stand there and demand one more year. Thank you.
Cedel, that was lovely. Those last 2 poems undid me a little bit. You're one of my favorite poets to listen to, and this new book is gorgeous. So thank you for reading from it tonight.
Thank you, Gabe.
We're now delighted to welcome Hala Alyan. Hala Alyan is a clinical psychologist and the author of 2 novels, including the just published book, The Arsonist City, which Entertainment Weekly described as revolutionary in its freshness. She is also the author of 4 award-winning collections of poetry, most recently The 29th Year. Her work has been published by The New Yorker, LitHub, The New York Times Book Review, Guernica, and many other journals and magazines. She is also, I'm excited to report, as a behind-the-scenes collaborator, the co-editor of a forthcoming anthology called We Call to the Eye and the Night, Love Poems by Writers of Arab Heritage. We are so pleased to welcome to Unbound, Hala Alyan.
Hi, thank you so much, Gabe. That's the first time I've heard the anthology be part of my bio, which is very exciting. And Gabe is going to be working with us on that, which is really thrilling. Thank you so much to Amy and to Cedale. I'm blown away by these readings. I'm a psychologist, so I come at this idea of my relationship to the body is different, and I often think about it in terms of how it connects to the psyche and how it connects to mental health. And I actually had a plan to read completely different poems, and then I was listening and taking in what was being read and just thought I could be more honest in what I read, maybe. So I'm going to just read totally different things, and it's going to be fine. They both die on Mondays in April. Nadia is awake again in the dream, hair freshly dyed. There is a conversation I started 4 years ago and never finished. Sometimes I think of my wedding night, how after the guests left and I pulled the last bobby pin from my hair, the dress collapsing in my armchair like a protest, I cried into his arms until I fell asleep. This is the last time we were all together, although of course there were other last times. The last time Fatma made a joke about America, the last time Fatma wore perfume, the last time spring entered that house. I am never paying attention. I cried because Fatma was already half gone, because Nadia would later say I was the happiest bride she'd ever seen, because I didn't recognize the photographs, because I left the wrong country, because hasn't everything already happened somewhere? Aren't we all waiting like unrung bells? And hadn't Fatma already died that night? And Nadia too, and the city, and the house, and in that hotel bed, in that flesh that is their flesh, in that bone that is their bone, their every single season. Wasn't I only remembering what had already happened? Habituation. Today, a woman tucks me between her legs like an egg. Of course, I think egg. She tells me each chakra is blocked. It feels prickly, she says, of the hand between my hip bones. You can pray now, she says, of the hand on my forehead. What I don't ask is when will this heart boat itself across the ocean? When will this heat break? I want a winter twice as long as summer, and I applaud the flock of geese pulling the night sky like a white thread. Ask me about habituation, and I'll show you Paris in July. How the days noosed me like a turtleneck, each dawn a misfiring of cortisol. Listen, I threw a silk dress over the balcony onto a street in Montmartre. Isn't that another way of saying I need this too? Please don't misunderstand. I should know better at this point than to believe my own body, but hasn't the story already changed because I told it? Don't I circle my own life like a vulture for sound bites, the hot black of a movie theater, panic bent over a sink, the water glass in 4 pieces, the fist I recognized in the dream and the dream alone? What would you tell her, the woman asks, about my own shivering body on that bed? I'd say you wanted enlightenment. Did you think you'd find it at the bodega next to the sunflowers? I'd say pay attention. I'd say wipe your face, get some rest. You're going to need it. I'd say you said you were ready, so show me. Self-portrait as my mother. When the warplanes come, I pluck them from the blue sky like tic-tacs. The cupboard is always full of honey and needles, Merlot and Marlboros, the rumor of America around my neck. It tightens. On the 3rd day of the month, I bleed a pond. Toss a gun into its mouth, I am the gun. The chamber empties into a Feiruz song. Take the color of the trees with you. California is my safe word. Oh bird, oh wink of a car on a highway. I know a nation by its germs, its endangered water. I know the desert as an unborn son, and every night I claim him. His black hair spiky as a cactus. Give me a fate and I'll lose it. Give me a border and I'll run it crooked as a love line on a bride's palm. I sing. I mop the floors. I can't kill for enough clean. At the flea markets, I buy mirrors and clocks. Lavender seeds, bird feeders fill my house with the belongings of dead men. My breasts rise. I read the drugstore horoscopes. You see, my moon is in Sagittarius, sun's in Akka, heaven's an empty sky, borders open, there's nothing on the other side, and isn't that God enough? Fixation. It's like knowing there's a house on fire and only you have the key. But there's no address, and the streets keep changing numbers, and if you don't make it in time, everybody inside dies. Even the houseplants. You never make it in time. I still like my brain. This feels as impossible as crown shyness, but it's true. I feel its lure flash like a camera bulb sometimes, the magic and the grief, like two rivers necking where they meet. Sleep study number 3. It's not night that's the problem. It's war. The cat on the neighbor's rooftop waits to be rattled with sound. I have planted 4 trees. I should have dyed my hair when I had the chance. Should have left America when I had the chance. A tattoo of my grandfather's birthplace. A good Palestinian would wear it on her skin. Darwish. No night is long enough for us to dream twice. This dark is a study on redaction. Nothing will protect us from the blink, not even your mother's blink. I am always a blank in my dreams. I blank women onto the mattress so blank they drown. I press the O blank of rifles to blank temple. I pull. My brother and I get night terrors. ICD 10 CM diagnostic code F51.4. There is a number for every grief, did you know? My brother's shouts tug my cousin and I from the other bedroom. It takes 5 minutes to wake him. Ezra, Ezra, he cries, and nobody appears. I am selfish and want Beirut gone now that I'm done with it. See also, disruptions from sleep are often caused by physical, neurological, and social factors. I used to walk the college campus until dawn, the trees dancing for me, the exhaustion pulling hallucinations from my frontal lobe. A decade later, the windows of Manhattan would pulse with bad lights and faces, a nightmare of waking. See also, I run to the living room half asleep 2-3 times a week, clutching my throat. I'm choking, I yell at my husband, I'm choking. See also, the diagnostic tests reveal some unexplained interruptions of sleep, what we consider to be micro-awakenings. See also, the sunlight rubs off our hands like flakes of gold. See also, your breathing, my husband says you keep forgetting, says to say you can't only means you can. I'm going to read some poems about being a patient myself. I have had a series of miscarriages this past year, and I also have some mild, sometimes dips into moderate health anxiety in general. That was sort of kicked off after an ectopic a couple of years ago. This is called The Uterus Speaks. I kept you safe. You'll workshop history, but the truth is I came first. 2 years is nothing. Try 30, mute and shackled, a belt of flesh over my mouth. Try blackout and torn ocean. Don't blame me for your milklessness. I was there when you kissed him on the pier. I was there on the tatty mattress of Beirut. Every choice is a renunciation of something else. I'll be a body isolated, red, petaled. I understand like a god understands. Every altar is built first with fear. Don't say I never helped you. I married death every month. I grew inside your mother, inside her mother. I've been waiting. Your evil eye, your dime store voodoo, the 2 million eggs I burn like Vegas money. I tried. I woke like a spark plug, then morning, then bright operating light, then silver fever dream of an immaculate scalpel, excising my only border. Like this, a labyrinth becomes prairie. Like this, you show me which door you'll take, the fantasy you'll build from my root and my flag. Blinkered hamper, astonishing machine. You're not the only one who pretends to regret what they've wasted. Dialogue. On the phone, she would ask about my son, if he was eating solids yet. There were 2 worlds then, the one we lived in and the one she invented, the one where my aunt remarried and nobody ever went to America, and we visited her every Sunday. We visited her every 2 years. I wouldn't say she haunts me so much as she likes to watch the maple trees change color, and who am I to stop her? I still have her voice. I still have Saturdays and cameras in Arabic. She calls when I'm not expecting. Kif ibnik, she says. How is he? How is he? What could I say back? He's good, I tell her. He's crawling. Mashallah, mashallah. We praise how much he's grown. This one's untitled. Today a man reads my spine like a sentence. Today a tickle of electricity showed where it hurt. Here, he says, his finger shoved into my neck. What I thought was breast or lung was nerve all along, and in this way I know nothing. In this way I am angry with myself for breaking my word. Which is to say, I saw another doctor, which is to say, I know I cannot stay afraid like this, holding my body like a crystal bowl. I know someday will break. I know something has to give, and what has to give is me, but something was hurt, I tell my mother. Doesn't that mean I am right to keep looking and looking? And she sighs like I am a child and says, don't you get it? Something will always hurt. Something will always be wrong. You need to learn to sit and wait to give your body a chance to mend in any ways. What about Beirut? What about the wreckage? I have no answers. I see another doctor. My spine needs unfolding. My chin needs melting. He will do more tests. I don't tell my mother that this is all I have, that I am afraid of sitting on the floor for an hour without speaking a word. I don't tell my mother that all I know of pain is emergency, that this is about Beirut in a way only Beirut would understand. I never say, Mama, there is pain that doesn't go, it just flits and converts and finds new addicts. And Mama, how else will I learn how to stalk all these ghosts back? This is called miscarriage. What carries you? A rush of teeth, nested scorpions. I am empty. This, when I wake before dawn. This, as the light pinches through the windows. Hold your arms out and you can cradle anything. I am in the ring. I am telling him it won't be February forever. See, if you're not careful, you'll be comforting him before you know it. Googling photographs of desert like this, I cradle. Like this, I mother the unmothered, a stopped clock. When I wake from the anesthesia, I ask, good? And mean I need to brush her hair. Can I go now, please? Her hair. The highway back home is foggy, and I mean empty. It is good to be empty, a jug, a bowl. It is good to be a color in the morning. The jade plant turns violet, and I turn from the window away into my own hands. I bloom, and the blooming is empty. A quarter moon past its prime. A wet I wipe from my jawline, this body, this address of muscle, and palpitate. I am a polite house guest. Look how I rinse out my cup when I'm done with it. I'm going to read 2 more poems. I kind of lost track of time. I think maybe 1 more poem. Okay. I'll just end on this one. This is called Spoiler. Can you diagnose fear? The red tree blooming from uterus to throat. It's one long nerve, the doctor says. There's a reason breathing helps. Muscles slackening like a dead marriage. Mine are simple things. Food poisoning in Paris, hospital lobbies, my husband laughing in another room, the door closed. For days I cradle my breast and worry the cyst like a bead. There is nothing to pray away. The tree loves her cutter. The nightmares have stopped, I tell the doctor. I know why. They stopped because I baptized them. This is how my mother and I speak of dying, the thing you turn away by letting in. I'm tired of April. It's killed our matriarchs, and in the backyard I've planted an olive sapling in the wrong soil. There is a droopiness to the branches that reminds me of my friend, the one who calls to ask what's the point, or the patients who come to me swarmed with misery and astonishment, their hearts like newborns after the first needle. What now, they all want to know. What now? I imagine it like a beach. There is a magnificent sandcastle that has taken years to build. A row of pink seashells for gables, rooms of pebble and driftwood. This is your life. Then comes the affair. Nagging blood work, a freeway pileup, the tide moves in. The water eats your work like a drove of wild birds. There is debris, a tatter of seagrass and blood from where you scratch your own arm trying to fight the current. It might not happen for a long time, but one day you run your fingers through the sand again, scoop a fistful out and pat it into a new floor. You can believe in anything, so why not believe this will last? The seashell rafter like eyes in the gloaming. I'm here to tell you the tide will never stop coming in. I'm here to tell you whatever you build will be ruined. So make it beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Hala, for those beautiful and fierce and moving invocations. That was really wonderful. Thank you to all three of tonight's wonderful readers. It was just splendid. You were a great trio, and I think it was just fabulous. We also want to thank again, we're getting a feline visitor here, as we sometimes do. We want to thank again tonight's event sponsor, the Christian Fellowship Church. Unbound is taking a little break, but our April is packed. We return on Tuesday, April 6th with an event called In It Together, Writing, Community, and Craft, featuring Laura Munson and Julie Metz, two New York Times bestselling authors and friends who will ask each other 4 powerful questions about their newest books. And of course, we have events all the way through the month, culminating with our keynote, though it comes at the end, with Tracy K. Smith and Jericho Brown. So we hope to see you many times throughout the month. And thank you again to our 3 readers this evening. Everyone have a good evening, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.